Welcome to Our Next Existence by Katie and the Chorus. I'm Katie, former technology strategist turned reluctant spiritual medium, and I channel messages from the Chorus, a group of beings just beyond our sensory perceptions who are loving, expansive, and who greatly enjoy sharing their perspective of us. Join us each week as we share and discuss their ideas about humanity's existence, purpose, and future. Concepts you can draw from to accelerate your path, expand your perceptions, and ultimately step into the flow of the universe and your life. Welcome back, everybody. So I was still going through my notes from all those early years of channeling the Chorus, and I came across a topic that I think is important to address now at this juncture in the season as we continue in these topics of distance. And I might just jump in and then we'll sort of get to connecting it. So for many of you who have been on the road of awakening for some time, I'm sure some of you have come across the question of, but why? I mean, sure, maybe we can understand that we chose to be limited for the experience of it and expansion. Ta-da! But there's got to be something a little closer to our frequencies, a little bit more of a specific explanation. Maybe we understand that it's not quite ready to manifest all the way down to our wavelengths, but aren't we expanding into sort of a next layer? And that layer should have answers in a way. I've said this before to other friends as we've talked about stuff. Sometimes that dissatisfaction that we feel when people are talking about 80,000 foot concepts is that there are layers or ladder steps in between, and we may be ready for that next level of answer that's closer to us, actually, or that we're expanding outwards towards, however you want to look at it. Sometimes we are dissatisfied with the big picture things because we're ready to connect to it a little more deeply, a little more in a five senses human case, a little more specifically. So I want to read you a couple passages now, and I'm just going to read them all the way through, and then we'll comment. These are from the Chorus in my early years. And I think there's some interesting things in here that I forgot about because I channeled this years ago and then, tucked it away in a box. But I think there's some interesting things in here that relate to that next level of specificity. What's interesting is if I pull this out of my history databanks, it's already been sort of marinating in our group consensus for a number of years. So I do believe that if I had taken this out at any other point in time earlier in my awakening process, it might not have resonated the same. But because we've laid out all these other concepts that we've been building upon in the last two books, this may now click into place for a lot of us in a new way that is actually propelling. Meaning, we're not going to limit this new information because it abides by the rules. It connects to other things that we believe in equal turn within our experience of limitation. So it levels out the playing field and opens us up to choice and possibility. It doesn't instantly sort of suddenly alter our ability to see more of ourselves in a way that violates the rules of the game. As the Chorus has often said, we have chosen to leave this game intact, to expand from our perspectives in the game. And this, I think, could tie in nicely to the positions that we are all in if you have vibrated to this episode as we are expanding outward. The one thing I will say to preface this before I read this passage is there are many different voices in the Chorus, something we've sort of glossed over most of the time here on the podcast, but you may actually hear a difference. Now, I'm not going to change my intonation at all, but the word choices are going to be a little different, and you might hear a little nuance in some of the different voices in the Chorus as I do this. Okay, so here goes the first passage. Humans are a special form of life from Mother Gaia. You are unique, as are each creation unique. Humans do things and are capable of things that no one else in the universe is or will ever be capable of. Ah, but how interesting that you are still learning what these things are, because in your sea of contrast, not yet do you see other beings. Very fascinating indeed. But some of you awaken to your potential even without that contrast. How does this happen? Is contrast necessary then? What is its purpose? Can all of the universe eventually be united? Many, many interesting questions. A pushing of the envelope happening right here, right now. A cutting edge for all creation everywhere. So much to learn and experience, and so much for we the oversouls to share with you all. You awake into your real nature, your reality. You awake to your oneness with us, and there is great joy here because of it. The endless cycle of creation and separation and unification that generates so much life, so much beautiful life. So in this first passage, I don't remember channeling this at all, but I think that where I was in talking to them was trying to understand this existence, why we had chosen suffering. Specifically, I was going through a lot of suffering myself, but I also couldn't understand what was the fascination. Like everywhere I turned around, there was some higher being that was trying to help humanity and was eager to connect with us. And I didn't understand if it was like this everywhere. Is everywhere in the universe just teeming with beings ready to greet some other beings as they come out from under a rock? I didn't know. And this was an interesting passage in the midst of a lot of those passages where they talked about the role of contrast in the universe and basically how humanity is in some ways breaking that rule or role. Because here we are locked down in an experience of limitation where collectively, so as a whole, there's probably outliers in the mix, of course. It's a big, badass universe. But collectively, we've been, quote unquote, alone. We haven't allowed ourselves to perceive many other beings or civilizations besides us, 5 senses humans where we all kind of believe the same stuff. And they said, but yet you're awakening. You're awakening to your potential, even without contrast. How are you doing it? And then they even said, is contrast necessary then? And what is its purpose? So you can see how for energetic beings that are in like a slightly higher up, if we want to use that direction kind of terminology, if you understand energy at that broad scale and creation and life, and you come across a group of beings who have signed up for a resonance with limitation, and in that experience of limitation where they have stripped out everything but 5 senses, they somehow still awaken. And the chorus has talked to me about this before, that this was a loving choice that we made to be limited. We trusted infinitely what we would learn by this experience and that we would always expand through it. There was never a fear of being stuck or not awakening. Those beliefs didn't exist where we came from. So we step into this experience and we go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into limitation. And especially as other beings have encountered us from their versions of the physical dimensions and their beliefs, right? Because according to the chorus, a definition of physical is to be a belief holder. This is like a vast universe of belief holders too, okay? So other belief holders have encountered us. And they have maybe totally different beliefs where they're just little energetic bubbles and they live forever and they have some other version of protection and prevention and similar stuff to us, but by our view, pretty different. And they have a relative understanding about how energy works. There's a power in contrast. There is a power in unity. These are the forces of creation. And then you get a group of squirrely humans, troublemaker humans that we are, who go into a deep experience of limitation and somehow awaken to our potential without contrast. Pretty big freaking question, isn't it? Okay, so now I'm going to keep going. Let me rummage around these pages and find the other passage I wanted to read. Oh, that's a good one. Okay, let's go over to this one. So now let's talk about humans a little more. And this ties back to the first book in which we talked about our emotional spectrum, if we want to put it on a line, or our emotional array, as the chorus described. So here's the passage. The human emotional spectrum is a way of connecting to other things in the universe, is a way of connecting to other probabilities, other realities, other dimensions, other aspects of you, and they are also portals to other tools in your tool set, you might say. Via joy, you may access other tools. When you energetically access an emotion, you are on the wavelength of those other tools. So there's a lot more we can say about this and that we will, but I want to connect this to the idea that we're talking about here, which is the big why question. Okay, so you have a group of troublemaker humans. narrow ourselves down to the 5 senses. Awaken to our potential somehow without any contrast. And the uniqueness that they're talking about that we have is this emotional spectrum and array, which means we narrowed ourselves down to next to nothing. Yet we have this capacity for emotion. And from this nothing place, our emotions are able to connect us to other probabilities, realities, dimensions, portals through emotion. Okay, so now you might be saying, what? Like, sure, I do step into a different reality when I'm really pissed off, but what does that mean, Katie? And I get it. It's a great question. And this is where we are at in awakening, which is starting to understand the actual utility of our emotions, which we came here to understand by way of the chorus's perspective. Now, the chorus sees us from the original decision to be limited. So they see us from way back, depending on how you look at history, if you're looking at it linearly. So the chorus says, well, this was a way of creating sort of like an intentional field of experience of your emotional array. You put yourselves into this unified field of perception, this mind-body instrument, and you created these scenarios through these beliefs where you would constantly feel things all the time very rapidly. Now, that may not feel rapid to us from this perspective because we are just a human going through our day. And maybe we feel like we were frustrated all morning and we were depressed for a week and there wasn't a lot of change in that emotion. And that's true from this perspective. From the soul's perspective, however, which is vaster, there may be aspects of us that are feeling things all over the map all the time. Now, this gets a little bit into an important distance topic, which is lifetimes or other realities or these other places that we feel like we were or we've been to. Whether we say it's in the context of past lives, like in a history sense, or whether we feel like it's a simultaneous reality, and so then it's happening all alongside us. We kind of all are getting a sense that we're not just here all the time. Those other corners of the playing field, those other playgrounds in the larger playing field, are places where we are able to experience rapidly a variety of different scenarios that create for us the conscious development of perceptions or energetic experiences of our emotional array. Now remember, to become conscious of something is to experience it. When we talk about consciousness here, sometimes it gets a little bit blended with like mental remembering. But you can be quote unquote conscious of something from this energetic perspective without actually remembering it. And this is what we were talking about in the early part of the season, which is your body knows. Bodies remember. And I think we talked about this towards the end of the Book of Remembrance too, as like a lead in to this season, which is that, do you ever find yourself humming a song and you don't know where it's from? Do you ever find yourself drawn to particular fabrics or places or portions of history? Do you ever feel like you got to go and talk to someone, but you don't know why? The body knows all that you are and is more likely to receive from those vaster frequencies than the mind will, because the mind, as of right now, is all up in sort of this generation of limiting beliefs. So at this juncture in awakening, we are going to feel things that we know somehow. This direct sense of knowing that we talk about at the end of the second book is going to supersede the mind. We will know a thing. We will know how to get there. We will know what it was. We will know something about this person that the mind cannot explain, because the mind, from this perspective, is an artifact of this reality. So if you are tapping into things from other realities, other timelines, other lifetimes, wherever you want to put it on the map, your body is going to know those things. Your mind will not. Make sense? Okay. And it's all right if this is like, what is happening? I can't even keep up with all this. It's going in somewhere, like we talked about last week. You are energetically receiving everything that I'm talking about. And also you can re-listen to this as many times as you need to. We're not going anywhere and we're infinite beings. So we actually have infinite time. So no worries. Okay. So let's continue. So we had these two passages so far. One is about humans are incredibly interesting because you're awakening to your full potential without contrast, even though you signed up for total contrast, which is it's a bit of a paradox. But what they're saying is you signed up for contrast, meaning you are so different than the infinite version that you came from. You're like the opposite side of the penny. Like on one side, you're a totally infinite being. And on the other side, you're this five senses human that's like a fraction of its soul self. So in that way, you are contrasting, or you're in a very contrasting experience. But then also, you didn't give yourself any contrasts in that conscious experience. You guys all basically look alike and act alike and think alike. And you didn't even know there were other beings out there for the longest time. And yet somehow you found your way out of it. You found your path of awakening. So much so that here you are having a conversation with us, energetic beings that are beyond this experience. Okay, so humanity is incredible, just so we know. And the human emotional array is a way of accessing this other stuff, right? Which is what we just talked about, which is the body, your feeling, your direct sense of knowing accesses more of what's out there. Cool? Okay, third passage. Ooh, of course, I just ripped out my tab. Hang on. Okay. Man, there's so much in this pages. We could spend hours on this. Well, we're spending hours on all of it with each podcast. But hopefully one day we'll all be discussing this stuff too, which I think will be a lot of fun. Okay, third passage. I'm just going to jump in. Ready? Where you see beauty is life. And where there is life, there is energy. And behind and beyond the life you see is an infinite trail through the universe to the source of all life and creation. Tap into life and you tap into the energy of the universe. Tap into love and excitement and creation, and you tap into all of that in the universe. Same concept, same energies, same vibrations, all same. Okay, I didn't change my intonation at all, but did you hear the difference in that chorus voice? All same. They're pretty funny. Okay, so isn't this interesting that humans are different? Humans have an emotional array. This is how we perceive and interpret energy from vaster frequencies. And what did they just tell us about one way in which we travel or we choose to move, or these different frequencies? They talked about seeing beauty. This is where we're going to bring these concepts right back down into distance and talking about place. So I have described some places in this season, and I will continue to as I'm able to tell the stories of what I have done at these different ancient sites. But one thing that I will tell you that most of them have in common is that they're beautiful. They lift my heart. They are in these mountainous regions where the views are incredible. Or maybe sometimes I've been in forests and maybe the forest doesn't seem remarkable, but the day that we're there, the weather is incredible. Or the trees are changing color. Or one time we were in a forest and there was this thick magical mist that surrounded us and the whole forest transformed. Most of my experiences going into these other places and encountering or interacting with other energies or beings that are there have to do with natural beauty, the world out there, rocks and cliffs and rivers and oceans. And in each of those places, I have become more and more aware of, as I am driving there across country or out into the middle of nowhere, the more I just flowed into my sense of beauty, the more I sort of release the things I was thinking about and just go, wow, and look out the window, the easier it is for me to feel and interpret the messages that I'm getting from those other frequencies. And specifically from the AO, if we want to still call them that, although lately I'm questioning that name choice entirely. There doesn't seem to be much ancient about them anymore. They seem very contemporary with us, and I don't know what to call them sometimes. But as my heart lifts, as I go into a state of awe over the beauty of wherever I am, they come through like the clear call of trumpets and song and amazingness. It's easier to understand their perspective in places of beauty. It's easier to understand how they see what has happened here from their version of how this all came to be. And also, when I am in those places of beauty, I feel like I know things that, frankly, I don't feel like I know when I'm maybe under fluorescent lighting in a stressful place. I see a lot of posts on social media about architecture. I like following architects and also nature photographers. And a common conversation, or at least it seems to be now in my corner of this community, is what was it that previous versions of our civilization must have believed in order to build things like the Acropolis or these vaulted cathedrals with these arches and buttresses and stained glass windows that do incredible things with light. And I think what's interesting here is to tie that to what the chorus is saying about humanity's uniqueness, humanity's skill or talent, or I don't know, just the way that we are with our emotions, and the way that what we feel accesses other places. Therefore, to surround ourselves with beauty may be a very direct and functional way to access other frequencies. We could connect this to any number of topics. So let's take grounding, which I think we talked about earlier this season, but I can't totally remember. It's all kind of a blur. Okay, so grounding gets us outside, right? And we're all like, wow, it's so effective. And the physiology of the human body even changes. I think I saw a study recently about the cardiovascular system actually changes when people are barefoot on the ground. Great. But why? And we could say, oh, the earth absorbs energy and it's like grounding us and it pulls all the bad energy out of us. And I don't know, maybe that's true. I don't know how to study that, and I am not a studier of that. But from this perspective, I can speak from this perspective. And perhaps an explanation in the infinite sea of explanations might be that when a human goes out and puts their feet on the ground, we are drawn into our bodies. where we are more likely to feel things. And if we are in the natural world, which is our world, we're more likely to feel a sense of beauty. And in accessing that emotion from our incredible and unique emotional array, we actually very literally transport ourselves onto different frequencies, and our bodies and our minds and our hearts and our spirits all reflect that shift. I know there's going to be a lot of questions as people go forward about what's real, especially when, as we all know from the path of awakening, you come to these junctures and you're just like, man, that wasn't real, or I believed something that was wrong, or I got deceived into that, or they lied to us. It does put into question a lot of our beliefs and experiences. And I have had some crazy experiences where I am not really sure what reality that I'm in. And it takes some time to integrate when I come back to this life as I know it. But the one thing that I have never wavered on in all of those experiences is the reality of the natural world. Because I feel beauty when I look at it, when I'm in it, when I'm leaning against a tree, when I'm listening to the babble of a brook, when I hear the sound of waves crashing on a sandy shore. It is consistent. It never wavers. And maybe some days I'm so preoccupied that I can't feel the beauty of the beach as much as another day, but I still recognize that it's there underneath all of my worrying. And so maybe it's a little like the chorus is saying, where there is life, there is energy. And beyond the life you see is an infinite trail through the universe to the source of all life and creation. I feel that trail. I feel that consistency of life. As much as we do crazy things with all of our abilities to create realities and worlds, and sometimes we feel like we're lost in the worlds that we create for the purpose of experiencing the sensations of being lost. It still is life beyond all of that. It is still creation and the power to create beyond all of that. That is a thread that is infinite. Doesn't go anywhere. We feel the source and the dependability of that source when we connect to beauty in the universe. And who knows? Maybe in the midst of all those shadows and deceit and crumbling illusions, one day we might even be able to see beauty too. And then there is no locked door that humanity cannot pass through. For we will have returned to our infinite selves and our extraordinary abilities that guide us to any places that we desire in creation. We love you infinitely. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you found these messages to be helpful. May they accelerate you on your path wherever you'd like it to go. For more information on the books which correspond to these podcast seasons, our podcast, live events, or how to get in touch with us, visit katieandthechorus.com. Thanks again. See you next time.